Hello, life science. We're still studying the icky and the creepy and the not so pleasant things. Don't worry, we'll be on to the fuzzy and the cute before too long, but for now we're still doing invertebrates, those slimy, creepy things that don't have a backbone and aren't very cute at all. Unless you're into that kind of thing. In which case, these are actually some of the coolest animals around. But hey, that's up to you. Let's get started. We're going to talk about arthropods today. Now, that name arthropod means jointed leg. You might know of other words that start with arthro, like arthritis. Arthritis means a swelling of the joints. So arthro refers to a joint, like a joint, And pod refers to like a leg or a foot. So arthropod means it has a foot or a leg that is jointed. In other words, it has little individual bendy segments, like that. All right, so here we go. The first fact about arthropods that is common to all of them is that they have what's called an exoskeleton. So let's make sure that we get that. They have an exoskeleton. And this is as opposed to what we have, which is called an endoskeleton. So let me just make sure that we get this here. Exo means outside. And the opposite of exo is endo. Endo means inside. Even in physical science, you may have heard of terms like exothermic and endothermic. Even inside of our own bodies, we have what's called an endocrine system and an exocrine system. Whenever you see exo, it means out or outside or out of, and endo would be the opposite, in or inside of. So exoskeleton just means a skeleton outside. Well, I could have probably said that in 4 seconds, but you know me, I made it 40. So, an exoskeleton is a body covering typically made of chitin, and it provides support and protection. So, then that an exoskeleton is basically an outside skeleton, but that's a really terrible name. I mean, no one ever calls it that. Really, we think of it as kind of like a shell. Now, not shell in the seashell sense of the word. This is the hard outer covering that protects the soft, squishy bodies of the creatures that have them. Okay, and they are made of chitin. This is relevant because chitin is also the substance that makes up the cell wall of fungi, whereas plant cell walls are made of something else, cellulose. So this is just a structural material that it's one of many that is available to life, and chitin ends up being the one. It is soft and flexible, so it's not quite like bone. It's maybe more like cartilage, but the comparison only gets you so far. You can add minerals to make it hard. And all of the creatures on the screen there, crab, beetle, ant, they all have exoskeletons made out of chitin. All right, so that's one feature of arthropods. What does it do? Well, the first thing that it does is it supports their bodies. So their bodies are actually large enough that they require structural support. If you are like microscopic or just very tiny, you could just be a blob. That's fine, because you're so light that gravity isn't enough to like pull you down and deform you. But once you get large enough, then you actually need to have a shape. Otherwise, you're just kind of blur and you'll die. So one of the things that an exoskeleton does is it gives it support. It gives the insect or arthropod, whatever it is, support. So functions for support. Obviously, it's also going to give it some protection. Right. This is stuff that like it's going to be a protective shell for them. It's going to be basically the vehicle that their organs move around in, so they can survive in the world and do their jobs. Now the thing is about an exoskeleton. So do you remember when we were talking about herbaceous versus woody stems, and how herbaceous stems can't grow past a certain point, or they would break through their outer layer, whereas woody stems are able to grow further and further. The exoskeleton tends to limit growth in that same way, because in order to grow, you would need to expand your exoskeleton. But if it's like made of minerals, think of it almost like it's a fingernail or something. It doesn't grow the way that living tissue grows. So it's harder for things with exoskeletons to get much larger. And whenever they do outgrow their shell, they need to molt. They must shed an outgrown skeleton that's called molting. Okay. Well, I think I've used up that piece of paper quite nicely, so we are ready for a new slide and a new sheet. Body segmentation. This is one of the first things you learn about bugs, which is loads of fun. But remember, we're talking about all arthropods, not just insects, so we will get to the other members of this group. But first, let's just go with the typical segmentation. Okay, so if we're dealing with familiar bugs, and we're talking about body segmentation, one thing that we're typically going to have is a head, as well as a thorax and an abdomen. And these are, not abdomen. And these are really well defined in insects like ants. So that's the one that I'm going to try and sketch here for you. Okay, so little mandibles here. Here's the eyes. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so let's talk about the segments here. So we got our head. That's anterior to the thorax, right? Anterior means like, towards the head side. And it contains the mouth and the sense organs, okay? So this is going to have mouth and sense organs. In the case of a lot of insects, we're talking about eyes, of course, but also like antenna. So let me put a couple antenna in there. There we go. Can't tell if it's antenna or if it's just like really mad. Okay, so that's in the head. The thorax is between the head and the abdomen. In the case of insects like this is also where their legs are. So let me go ahead and give this guy some legs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and abdomen. That is the body region posterior to the thorax. All right, well, that's not going to be the case for all arthropods, but this is a common way of dividing them up. For example, some creatures like spiders, crustaceans, and I think that's a centipede, they don't have these body divisions. For example, you'll notice, say, for a spider, I think I can draw one below here. A spider has an abdomen. Is that? Yeah, that. I might be running out of room there. Let me move that up. There we go. So if I were to draw a spider, first of all, not enjoying drawing a spider, but I'm doing it for you. We've got an abdomen, but then they don't have a central thorax. They have just a second body segment, and all of the legs come out of there. So yeah, let's put some, there we go. Nightmares. All right. So this here, we've got the abdomen, yeah. But this segment is basically a head and a thorax together. So if we were to do the math, so to speak, head plus thorax equals what's called a cephalothorax. So that's what this segment is. Now, head is obviously an English word, but that has a Latin root, cephala. So if you've ever heard of a condition called encephalitis, it's a swelling of your head. Cephala refers to head. So obviously cephalothorax just means that. By the way, while we're talking about Latin, I want to connect this to you. You know, you have an abdomen, right? So typically, when we say your abdomen, we're referring to, right, your stomach. Well, there is internal to your anatomy a part of your body called the abdominal cavity, and that refers to basically everything inside what you think of as your stomach. It's like, you know, it's where your liver is, it's where your stomach is, it's where your intestines are. Okay, but there is another region of your trunk above your belly but below your head, and that would be your chest. That would be where your rib cage is. And it turns out that above your abdominal cavity is a cavity called your thoracic cavity. Thorax basically just means chest. So when we're looking at the divisions of the body of an arthropod, you can take abdomen to be like belly and thorax to be like chest, and then head to, well, be head. We just throw in the Latin for head here on cephalothorax. Don't let that throw you off. Anyway, those are two common ways of dividing up arthropod bodies. There are some others with many segments, but these are two pretty common ones. Anyway, I'm sick of having this spider out. I hate spiders. So, moving on. Jointed appendages. Awesome. We got some different creatures here. So let's make room and take some different notes. So what about jointed appendages? That is just characteristic of arthropods. I mean, jointed leg, you've got those appendages that end up with joints. Actually, I want to get another look at that picture. Because, oh, wrong way. I want to get another look at that picture. So in that close-up of the ant and the scorpion, you can see individual, like, little segments, okay? So whenever you're seeing a arthropod, you're kind of looking at, like, you know, little individual, you know, segments like this that can have a joint and that they're connected like that. Anyway, that's characteristic of arthropods. Just really gorgeous pictures of these arthropods. So it's nice to go back and look at them. Moving on. They have what is called a ventral nervous system. That is not what we have. We have a central nervous system, which means we have one big brain connected to the rest of our body through a spinal cord. They have a ventral nervous system, and that refers to not the anterior, not the posterior, not the dorsal, but the ventral side of an organism. And the ventral nervous cord runs from ganglia to posterior. Remember that ganglia are bundles of nerve tissue. So being on its belly, it's protected by most of the body. And so that means upside down arthropods are extremely vulnerable. So they have a nervous system on their ventral side. Nervous system on ventral side. It's protected, but only when the creature is right side up. So yeah, a bug on its back is really, really vulnerable. Okay, so more in the nervous system, they have some sensory organs. Here's a nice awkward close-up of what appears to be a fly. So the first thing, and this is something that I think everybody's familiar with in terms of bugs, are antennae. And these grant arthropods a sense of touch, taste, and smell. So, of course, antennae are sense organs. Sense organs, and that would be touch, taste, and smell. And then we also have to deal with their eyes. Bug eyes are some of the freakiest things in terms of our ability to relate to them, because many insects, many arthropods, I keep saying insect because it's the most populated group of arthropods, but arthropods also includes arachnids and crustaceans, and I don't want to keep giving the impression that arthropods are nothing but bugs. But many of them have compound eyes, although some of them also have simple eyes. So a compound eye are ones that have many lenses. Okay. What do I mean when I say many lenses? Well, it might be easier to first answer what is a simple eye if it only has one lens. Okay, is that all? Yeah, that's all there. So, let me just grab something for you to look at. Here we go. All right, so most of us have cameras of some kind available to us, and here's just my phone there. So if I were to flip this over, that right there, that is the lens of the camera. And basically, it is the eye. It is the hole into which light enters if you're taking a picture. And it has one lens. In other words, there is one entry point for light to come in and then get focused onto a retina in order to be imaged. Your eyes are that kind. You have a single lens, right? A single lens. And light enters through there. It's focused on the back in your retina, and that's how an image is formed. Now, if you could imagine an eye that is just covered in those, so maybe like on the back of one of those newer iPhones that has like 3 of them and gets people all freaked out. Well, okay, the picture of the fly that you see there has like hundreds of them, and they're all like really, really tiny, so that's freaky. But they have a limited scope, meaning that they can't see very much. It's just all of them together form an image, like a composite image. All right, so there's sensory organs. How about their circulatory system? This is one that's very different from us, so it's quite fascinating. They have something called an open circulatory system. So you might think, okay, what's an open circulatory system? Sometimes the best way to understand something is by comparing it to its opposite. We don't have an open circulatory system. We have a closed circulatory system. And what that means is in a closed circulatory system, the way it works is your blood stays in blood vessels the entire time. So, we got like a heart. Yeah, it's a heart. And there is a path out of the heart. And then, it goes like through the body and, branches and blah, blah, blah. So here's your body here. And then it ends up coming back in. Okay. Closed circulatory system. Blood flows out the heart through this blood vessel, reaches the body, and then comes back through the blood vessel. That is not exactly how an open circulatory system works. An open circulatory system works like this. Open circulatory system kind of works like this. So you got your heart, your very scientifically accurate heart, and it just kind of like just dumps it onto the body. And then it gets collected and pumped back up. So it's almost like a fountain, if you can imagine that, where a fountain sprays water and then pumps it back up to get sprayed again. That's how an open circulatory system works. Now, you'll note that this one can work upside down. That one can't. So since the circulatory system is partially gravity powered, if an arthropod is upside down for an extended period of time, it will kill them. That's kind of crazy if you think about it, that just being upside down can kill you. But again, the way that they deliver blood to their organs is not with blood vessels that get thinner and thinner. It's just kind of like washing its inside organs with blood. Man, I wouldn't want to eat while I was doing this lesson. Anyway, so the open circulatory system is the last bit that is going to be about arthropods in general. What I want to do now is switch to insects in particular, because like I said, insects are the most populated group of arthropods, are also the most well-known. Everybody hates spiders because spiders are terrible, and also crustaceans are a bit more complex. So if it doesn't bug you, we're going to crawl over and just do insects. And there we are. So let's go ahead with some orders of class Insecta. Now I say orders because I want to remind you about Linnaean classification. We go kingdom, phylum, class, order. So the classes, arthropods are a class, and I need to remember the rhyme. I remember kings play cards. So arthropods are the phylum. Class, insects are a class, and orders are what we're talking about. So let me just actually sketch that out here. When it comes to kingdom, we are in animals. When it comes to phylum, we're talking arthropod. When we are at kings play cards, class, that would be insects. And so we are in orders. So let's look at a few. All right, we'll make a list and get down some details. So the first order of class Insecta is Lepidoptera. Lepidoptera is the moths and butterflies. So I'm going to go ahead and give every one of these its own sheet, just out of respect, but also for organization. So first one is order Lepidoptera. Okay, so what does this mean? Each one of these, you can actually learn a little bit about them by their name. Ptera, P-T-E-R-A, means wing. So actually, I'm going to bring back this sheet of notes to write that, because that's kind of general. So let me just back up a second. Whenever you see Ptera, that means wing. And you might recognize that as being part of the name of, say, winged lizard, pterosaur, right? Or pterodon, wing tooth. Pterodactyl, winged finger. These are names maybe you've heard from dinosaurs. So whenever you see ptera, that means wing. Lepidoptera means scale wing, and it has to do with the specifics of how its wings work. scaled wings. Butterflies rest with their wings raised. Moths rest with their wings flat. That's generally how you can tell. So you see those pictures there, but that's worth writing down. Not butterflies. Butterfly? You'll just have to give it to me. Butterflies rest with wings raised. Moths rest with wings flat. This is generally how you can tell moths from butterflies. So the adult forms are kind of nice sometimes, but the larvae are almost always a headache. For example, caterpillars eat crops. Moth larvae eat fabric. And there is something you can get called a mothball that tries to discourage moths from laying eggs. Yeah, they also smell terrible. So larvae, they can cause some damage. So I'm going to say they can damage stuff. I mean, just trying to keep it brief. Okay. Next up, Hymenoptera. And I think it's on the next slide that hymen means veil. I think that's what it means, but let's see. Ants, bees, and wasps. Membranous wings, that's what that means. Veil is kind of close. So Hymenoptera means membranous wings. So the first part of the word refers to the membrane. So let me write that down. Hymenoptera. And it was wasps, bees, and ants. Did you know those are all part of the same class? If you think about how their bodies are shaped, maybe now you can see a similarity. Let's see, where did I put that other... Oh, yeah. If I were to do this, since I already did this, I don't mind ruining it. If we were to take that picture of the ant that I drew and just like... put some stripes on it and a stinger and maybe like some wings or something. Yeah, okay, I could kind of see. Maybe that's a wasp now. You see how similar they are? I don't know. I kind of just put a Broncos uniform on them. So get out of here. We're doing Hymenoptera, membranous wings. These are also what are called social insects, which means that they have specialized members that all perform a certain task in a kind of society. These are all social insects. So maybe we can talk about the roles that some of them play in their society. So let's start with bees. What are worker bees? So let's talk about worker bees. These are females without reproductive capabilities. They are sterile females. So what's the deal with that? So it turns out that the organ that bees use to lay eggs and sting is the same organ. The name of the egg-laying organ is the ovipositor, and with a barb on the end and the ability to inject venom, that thing is a stinger. So basically, I could just write here, stinger equals egg layer. So only female bees are going to be able to sting because males do not possess the ability to lay eggs, so they don't have an ovipositor. Now, the thing is, these worker bees are females that don't have reproductive capability, which means they have the egg layer, but they can't lay eggs with it. Instead, they can sting with it. So the stinger's going to release poison into its target. The barb at the end is going to catch the target, causing the bee to lose part of its abdomen and die. sad face. And so basically what that means is, I don't know if you've ever been fishing and you've seen a treble hook. If you just got like a pointy stinger like that, then it'll, go in and then come back out, and it's just you got stabbed with a poisonous knife. However, let's take the other end of that. You see this little clip on there? All right. So if we push through with this, all of a sudden, that clip there, well, never mind. Maybe it's a little too easy to remove the cap, but the idea is supposed to be that it catches and it won't let it just come out. So a stinger plus a barb can turn into something like this. Ho ho ho! So easy to go in, very difficult to get out, and so it ends up getting stuck in the thing that it stung. A little bit of the abdomen comes off, and the poor thing dies. Okay, so the role of the worker is to build and maintain the hive, collect food for the hive, care for the eggs, care for the larvae once the eggs hatch, and protect the queen, which you probably could have gathered just from the name worker. Okay, so they do maintenance, build and protect, that is, collect food, they take care of the larvae and the eggs. I'm sorry, care for the larva. Oh, I'm misspelling everything. Care for larva, queen, and eggs. I know there's not much good in writing notes that are so messy you can't read them, so I'm saying it out loud. I'm sure you can figure it out. Right. Okay, so worker bees. Well, what about the men? What about the males? That's actually what a drone is. The drones are the only male bees in the hive. There's not very many of them. They only serve reproductive purposes. The only reason that there are drones is so that there can be the only reason that they're there is for reproduction, is to provide the male gamete to the queen. They are so useless otherwise to the hive that when food is scarce, sometimes they just get chucked. Worker bees have been observed disposing of them when food is scarce. So I'm going to just go ahead and write that drones are just the useless males. They're only there for reproduction. How sad for them. Okay. What about the queen? The queen, that's an important bee, right? Yeah, the queen's important. I think I'm running out of room on this sheet, which is sad because I wanted to keep this all on one sheet. The queen is the only female with reproductive capabilities. As a matter of fact, during development, her reproductive capabilities are maintained through like a special maturation process. Her stinger is not barbed, which means she can sting repeatedly, although she's not going to be in the thick of any fighting because she's deep within the hive and she is protected by the workers. There's only one queen per hive, and as you can see in that picture, the queen is much larger than all the other bees. So she supplies this substance to workers. It attracts the workers, and if it ends up running out, the workers will feed a high protein food to the larva. So larva will develop reproductive capabilities, and then the first to reach adulthood is a new queen. I think I might have to put this because that's just too much to leave out in the air. So let me go ahead with this. So here's how this works. Say we got a queen bee. See, it's a bee. But this one's the queen bee. She supplies a special queen substance to the workers. So here's a little queen substance to the workers. See, they're the workers. Worker bees. And as long as the queen keeps that queen substance coming, everything's good in the hive. But let's say the queen dies, or disappears, or gets lazy. I don't know. No, they don't get lazy. But let's say something happens to the queen. The queen is dead. Blech. There's no more queen substance. Uh-oh. We're not getting any more queen substance. We got to... Remember, the workers are the ones who take care of the larvae. So let's say we got little baby larvas. Little baby bee larvas. Oh, little larvas, aren't you so cute? They feed a high protein food to the larva. High protein food. And then what ends up happening is, with this high protein food, the larvae develop, and they develop quickly, and they develop well, and they will start to develop reproductive capabilities. And the first one to reach adulthood is a new queen. So, they have a race to grow up. And so, let's say we've got bees at various stages of maturation, and then these are all female bees with the ability to reproduce, and then all of a sudden one of them is like, I can lay eggs now. All of a sudden it's time to kill the others. And they actually must flee for their lives, otherwise they're dead. So that is the violent story of queen bee society. This queen bee will start to produce that queen substance for these workers so they can stop feeding high protein food to the larvae, causing them to grow up with reproductive capabilities. And they just got to kill these other females so that there's not discord in the realm. Okay, honey. Finally, something that we like. We talked about bugs and exoskeletons and bee murder. Now we're finally talking about honey. That is partially digested flower nectar. Oh, okay. It sounded nice until a second ago. So honey is food for the queen and backup food for the workers. They store it in honeycombs, which are made of wax secreted by workers in a hexagonal array. That's just what happens when you squish a whole bunch of tubes together. They form hexagons. 2 pounds of wax can hold 50 pounds of honey. Of course, the wax is hollow, so it can hold a lot of that. So, next time you enjoy some honey, basically you are enjoying flower nectar that has been collected and partially digested. Okay. It's still delicious, so I don't mind. Okay, so we've been talking about bees for a long time. Let's talk about ants. They are also part of Hymenoptera. Yeah, they're also part of Hymenoptera. As with bees, only reproductive ants have wings. Have you ever seen an ant with wings? They're not very common. They're the ones with reproductive capability. The queen remains in the colony, obviously, because it needs to be the center of the colony, and the males will die soon after mating. So, ants, some have wings. Only those that reproduce have wings. And poor males, they die soon after mating. But apparently male insects they don't have a very nice life. Okay, well, I'm not going to get a whole new paper after that. I'm just going to draw a line. Sad moments. All right, so Coleoptera, the beetles. Lots of bugs you know are beetles. Coleoptera means horny wings in that they are really hard shells. Think about like a ladybug. Its back is almost like a helmet. It's hard, it's smooth. It's made of a material similar to a horn. This is the largest order of animals. Largest order. It means that we've got the most members in this order. There is legendary appetite that these creatures have. They have an enormous appetite. Some of them eat crops. Ladybugs eat aphids and other crop-destroying insects. So, yeah, beetles eat an awful lot. So there is a particular beetle that is worth noting. It's called the Bombardier beetle. Bombardier beetle. And it has a couple chemicals that it stores in its body that it uses like a weapon. It's absolutely crazy. We just have to watch some footage of that. It combines hydroquinone and hydrogen peroxide with catalase and peroxidase, which basically all you need to know is that is it's a quick chemical way to cause enormous and immediate release of heat. So the violent reaction produces a lot of heat and pressure, up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. That's almost boiling. And the valve in its tail releases this reaction at threats. It can even aim. This thing is nuts. Okay. Well, I didn't have a lot to say about Coleoptera, so I'm going to go ahead and stick on this same sheet for Diptera. Oops. So, I had a little Freudian slip here. Have you ever heard of a disease called diphtheria? You should notice the similarity, but I wasn't trying to write that, so let me cross that out. We're looking at Diptera, and that is the order of flies. It also includes gnats and mosquitoes. Again, Diptera, they have membranous wings, which means they are like see-through. They also have a second pair of smaller stabilizing wings. So, two pairs of membranous wings. Okay, and the second pair is for stabilizing. They have a weak exoskeleton, which is one of the reasons why they are so easy to squish. They have no stinger, which is nice because being stung is not nice. And also, no ability to bite. They don't have any mouth parts for biting. Their only defense is escape. So, they have a weak exoskeleton. No ability to bite. The only way that they can save themselves is escape. Okay, so let's see what they're all about. They're one of the orders of insects that we are pretty familiar with because we have a lot of interaction with them. For example, houseflies harbor millions of bacteria and viruses. Well, that's great. Yeah, houseflies are pretty disgusting. They have germs all over them, so if a housefly lands on something, just throw it away. Houseflies harbor lots of germs. Now, here's how they eat. If they don't have biting mouth parts, how do they eat? Well, they secrete digestive juices onto food and sponge up the digestive material. Yeah, okay. So, do you remember how, was it a planarian who would secrete digestive enzymes and then extend its pharynx and kind of suck it up? This does something similar to that. It secretes digestive juices, and then it sponges its food up. So it has a mouth that's basically like a little vacuum cleaner attachment. Yuck. Okay, so mosquitoes, that's another fun one. Mosquitoes usually, I shouldn't say usually, often will carry pathogens that cause malaria, yellow fever, and West Nile virus. Whew. So that's one reason why you don't want to get bitten by mosquitoes. Mosquitoes can transmit disease. And the way they do that is by having those diseases inside of them, and then when they bite you, and they're sucking in your blood, there is an exchange between what's in them and then what's in you. Some of the germs make it over. So something else that mosquitoes have is they have an anti-clotting chemical when feeding. It's called an anticoagulant. So let me write that. Anticoagulant means anti-clotting. And the idea is when they are sucking your blood, they stick a mouth that's kind of like a straw into your skin, and then they start slurping on you like a straw. But the thing is, if your blood vessel is broken and you're bleeding, one thing that your body will do is patch the hole with a clot. They have something in their saliva that prevents that clot from happening, so that the food supply, your blood, is not interrupted. Thanks, mosquitoes. Okay, we have another order here. It's called Order Orthoptera. Crickets and grasshoppers. So many orders of insects. Alright, so Orthoptera. Ortho means right. As in like, not like correct, but like upright. So an orthopedic device would be one that like helps you be right and have its have a good position. So Orthoptera, they have two pairs of wings. One of them is leather-like and the other is membranous. Two pairs of wings. One of them is leathery, and one of them is membranous. Okay, so they also have a large pair of jumping legs. And this if you know anything about crickets and grasshoppers. Oh, large pair of jumping legs. So these are the unique characteristics of an insect in class Orthoptera. That is a pair of wings that's leathery and a pair of wings that is membranous. And we don't usually see them because, generally speaking, if a grasshopper is flying, then it's moving too quickly for us to get a good look at it. And when it's resting, you can only see the leathery wing that's covering up the membranous one. But if you ever manage to catch a grasshopper, you can open up its wings. Take a look. It has membranous wings underneath its leathery ones.